I'm the only one who walked out of that building alive. Everyone else who worked that night shift never made it home. There were no alarms, no screams, no blood where it was supposed to be. The police asked me the same question over and over again. Did you see anyone else inside the building? I told them no. And that was the first lie I ever told about that night. I didn't see a monster. I didn't hear anything chase us. But I know exactly what killed them. Because whatever it was, it didn't need to run. It waited. It waited in places cameras don't look. In the gaps between hallways. In the silence that feels heavier than noise. By the time the sun came up, I was the only name left on the schedule. They say I'm lucky. That I survived something no one else did. But they don't know what followed me home. Some nights, when the house is quiet and the lights are off, I hear the same sound I heard at work. Slow footsteps. Careful ones. Stopping right outside my bedroom door. I don't open my eyes anymore. Because I learned something on that night shift: if you acknowledge it, knows you're awake. I wasn't brave. I was broke. 38 years old. Divorced for 2. One kid I only saw on weekends. I used to tell people I was between opportunities. The truth was, no one was calling back. I missed rent twice that year. Got the late notices taped to my door like warnings. Electricity shut off once. Phone almost gone the next. When you live like that, fear doesn't come from monsters. It comes from envelopes. From numbers on a screen. From realizing you don't have anyone left to borrow from. That's why I took the night shift. Nobody else wanted it. They posted the opening 3 times. 2 people quit before finishing their first week. One guy didn't even come back after training. I didn't ask why. Night pay was better. A few dollars more per hour doesn't sound like much, unless you're counting coins in your car before going inside the grocery store. The job title didn't sound dangerous. Facility operator. Night clerk. Security, technically, but mostly just sitting, watching monitors, answering calls that never came. It was supposed to be quiet. That's what the supervisor said when he handed me the badge. Nothing ever happens after midnight. He smiled when he said it. Like it was a joke everyone already knew. I worked nights before. Gas stations. Storage facilities. Places where time slows down and your thoughts get louder. You learn routines. Coffee at 12:30. Bathroom at 1. Walk the halls at 2. Another coffee at 3, even though it tastes like metal. By 4, your body forgets what time it is. By 5, you're just waiting for daylight to rescue you. That's what I thought this would be. A place to disappear for 8 hours. Get paid. Go home. I didn't tell my ex about the job. Didn't tell my kid either. Hard to explain why you're never asleep at night and always tired during the day. Harder to explain why you take work that everyone else avoids. But when you're broke, you stop asking what things cost you. You only ask what they pay. The building itself didn't look dangerous. Old. Sure. Cheap lighting. Paint peeling in places no one bothered fixing. It felt forgotten. And forgotten places feel safe because you assume nothing is paying attention anymore. That's the mistake I made. I thought the night shift was empty. I thought I'd be alone. The layout matters. I didn't understand that at first. I thought buildings were just walls and doors, places you move through, not things that move around you. But this place had a shape you could feel. There was one main hallway. Long, narrow, no windows. The kind of hallway where sound travels too far and silence feels wrong. 3 doors on the left, 2 on the right. All of them metal. All of them numbered. All of them locked except when they weren't. At the far end of the hallway was another door. No number. No sign. Just a handle worn smooth, like it had been touched too often. That door never stayed shut. Maintenance said it was the hinges. The supervisor said the same thing. Old building, they told me. Pressure changes. I nodded. Because that explanation cost nothing. But the door didn't swing open. It eased open. Slowly. Carefully. Like something on the other side was listening. The lights overhead were fluorescent. Cheap. Always buzzing. Every third light flickered, just enough to make shadows stretch where they shouldn't. If you stood still long enough, the hallway looked longer than it was. The camera system covered most of the building. Not all of it. There were blind spots. Corners where the feed froze for half a second. Angles where the lens couldn't see past a doorway. I memorized those without realizing why. There was a room marked Authorized Personnel. Only that stayed locked. I never had the key. No one on nights did. They told me it was storage. Old equipment. Nothing important. But the lock on that door was newer than the rest. And sometimes when I walked past it, I heard something shift inside. Not footsteps. Not movement. More like weight being adjusted. Like something settling in because it knew I was there. The building had rules no one wrote down. Don't linger at the end of the hallway. Don't stand between 2 open doors. Don't turn your back on the dark. I learned those rules the way people always do. By almost breaking them. And every night, as I walked the same path again and again, the hallway felt less like a place I worked and more like something that was measuring me.
Class residue.
Around 1:17 a.m. That was the first time something didn't fit. I remember the time because I checked it twice. Once on my phone. Once on the wall clock that always ran 5 minutes slow. I heard footsteps. Not loud. Not rushed. Slow. Careful. The kind of steps someone takes when they don't want to be heard. I froze. Then I told myself not to. Old buildings make noise. Pipes shift. Metal contracts. That's what I'd heard 100 times before. I checked the monitors. Hallway 1 empty. Hallway 2 empty. The end door closed. Nothing moved. I laughed. Out loud. The sound of my own voice made me feel stupid and safer at the same time. I sat back down. That's when the cameras lagged. Just a blink. Half a second of static. Then everything snapped back into place. I stared at the screen longer than I meant to. The image looked normal. Too normal. Like it had reset itself. I told myself the system was old. Budget equipment. Cheap wiring. Nothing worth worrying about. But I didn't stop watching. The feeling came next. That pressure between your shoulders when someone is standing behind you. I didn't turn around. There was nothing there to see. I knew that. The hallway behind the desk was empty. Always was. Still, I felt watched. Not from behind. Not from the cameras. From the corner. The part of the room the lights didn't quite reach. I adjusted my chair so I wouldn't have to look at it. Another laugh. Quieter this time. Get a grip, I told myself. By 1:30, everything was calm again. No footsteps. No glitches. No feeling. I convinced myself it had passed. That's the thing about the first deviation. It doesn't scare you. It teaches you how to ignore the next one. The footsteps came back. Not all at once. Not loud. They returned the way a habit does, slowly, patiently, as if they knew I would notice eventually. The first time, they stayed at the far end of the hallway. The second time, they were closer. By the third time, I could tell exactly how many steps it took to reach my desk. I didn't check the monitors anymore. I already knew what they would show. Nothing. Every hour, on the hour, the sound returned. Always the same rhythm. Always the same pause. Step. Step. Wait. It felt deliberate. Like whatever was out there was teaching me a pattern. Around 2:40 a.m. the silence changed. Not disappeared. Changed. The buzzing lights overhead went quiet. Not off, just muted. The hum of the building faded, like someone had turned down the volume on the world. I held my breath without realizing it. That's when I heard the door. Not the end door. The one closer to me. The handle turned. Slow. Careful. Metal whispering against metal. It didn't rattle. It didn't force itself. It tested the door. Like it was checking whether I had locked it out of habit or out of fear. I stared at my hands. They wouldn't move. I told myself it was pressure, air shift, temperature. I told myself a lot of things that didn't explain why the handle stopped the moment I thought about running. It stayed like that for a long time. Not moving. Waiting. When it finally released the handle, I almost cried. Then, I heard it walk away. Only it didn't go back down the hallway. The footsteps circled. Around the desk. Around the walls. Always just out of sight. The cameras flickered again. This time, longer. When the image returned, something was wrong. The hallway was empty, but the light at the far end was dimmer. Like something tall was blocking part of it. I leaned closer to the screen. The shape didn't move. It didn't need to. My phone vibrated 3:00 a.m. That's when the rules stopped working. The door at the end of the hallway opened wider than it ever had before. Not enough to see inside. Enough to know it wanted me to look. The smell came next. Not rot. Not blood. Something stale. Dry. Like air that had been trapped somewhere too long. The footsteps started again. Closer than ever. I could hear weight now, not just sound pressure. Each step made the floor respond, like the building itself was aware of what was moving through it. The footsteps stopped instantly. Silence rushed back in, too fast, too complete. I realized then. It wasn't blind. It knew exactly where I was. The handle turned again, this time on the door behind me, the one that led to the locked room. I heard something inside shift its weight. Not toward the door. Away from it. Like it was making room. I didn't scream. I didn't run. I stood there, under flickering lights, surrounded by doors that suddenly felt like mouths. Whatever was in the building was no longer circling. It was closing in. In the morning, the police reviewed the footage. I didn't sleep. I didn't go home right away. I sat in the break room with a paper cup of coffee. I never drank, watching the hands of the wall clock crawl forward, like they were afraid to reach sunrise. When the first officer arrived, he looked tired, like he'd already decided this was going to be another false alarm. Then, he walked past the main hallway and stopped, because the end door was wide open. Not all the way. Just enough to show darkness. And there were marks on the floor. Not footprints. Drag lines. Long. Uneven streaks like something heavy had been pulled, or like something with too many points had pressed down and shifted. They brought in a second officer. Then a third. They asked me where my coworkers were. Marcus. Janine. Ruddy. I told them the truth. They were here at midnight. They were here at 1. And then they were gone. No calls. No texts. No leaving on camera. That's when they pulled the DVR. The cameras caught something. Not a person. Not an animal. At 1:17 a.m. the main hallway looked empty until the lights flickered. For half a second, the screen broke into static. And when it came back, the hallway was still empty. But the light at the far end didn't reach as far. Like something tall was standing between the bulbs and the floor. The officer leaned closer and rewound it, frame by frame. That's when we saw it. Not a face. Not a body. More like a shape that couldn't decide what it was. It didn't walk. It unfolded itself. Sections of shadow sliding out from the corner in angles that didn't match the building. Like an umbrella opening the wrong way. Like joints bending where joints shouldn't exist. The camera tried to focus. The shape refused. Every time the image sharpened, it changed. Thinner. Wider. Too long. And then it was right outside the security desk without crossing the space between. The officer swore under his breath. He looked at me like he finally believed. I wasn't just a tired guy hearing things in the dark. Then they found the handprints on the glass of the break room door. Except they weren't handprints. Too many fingers. Too close together. The palms were wrong, more like pressure marks from something that pressed itself flat and listened through the glass. They dusted it anyway. The text brush stopped mid-swipe because there were no whorls, no ridges, no skin pattern. Just smooth smears and tiny crescent dents like nails that weren't nails. A few minutes later, one officer went to call it in.
He never came back. Not off camera.
Not down the hallway. Not out the front door. He stepped into a blind spot and vanished. That's the moment the room changed. Nobody joked. Nobody spoke. They didn't look at the end door anymore. They looked at the corners. Like they finally understood. The building wasn't the problem. The building was just where it waited. That's when I realized it wasn't haunting the building. It was hunting whoever worked the night shift. And it wasn't finished. Because the last thing the footage caught right before the system cut out was the security desk chair slowly turning toward the corner by itself. As if something invisible had just sat down and decided to stay. They shut the place down. No press conference. No explanation anyone could repeat without lowering their voice. They called it an accident. Structural failure. Electrical malfunction. Human error layered on top of human error. The report never mentioned the cameras. Never mentioned the blind spots. Never mentioned the missing people. I was advised not to talk about it, so I didn't. I quit the next day. Didn't turn in my badge. Didn't ask for my last paycheck. I just walked away. That's what you do when you survive something no one wants to admit happened. I moved apartments a month later. Different part of town. More light. Thinner walls. I stopped working nights. Tried mornings. Tried afternoons. Anything where the sun was up and people could see me. For a while, it worked. The sounds faded. The memories dulled. I told myself it was over. That whatever happened in that building belonged to that building. Then the house started making noise. Not loud. Just enough. The kind of noise you ignore. At first. Wood settling. Pipes ticking. The refrigerator clicking on and off. Normal things. That's what I told myself. Until I noticed the pattern. Every night, just after 1 a.m., the same time the footsteps used to start, I would hear movement. Not in the hallway. Not in the next room. Somewhere that didn't make sense. Too close. Too careful. I stopped checking the time. I stopped turning on lights. I learned what not to do. Don't acknowledge it. Don't listen too closely. Don't stand still. Because the moment you do, it adjusts. Sometimes, when I'm lying in bed, I feel that familiar pressure. That sense of being measured. Judged. Like something is deciding whether I'm worth the effort again. I never see it. I don't think it wants to be seen. I think it wants to be remembered. The case is closed now. Files boxed up. Evidence logged and forgotten. 3 names on a report that no one reads anymore. They say I was lucky. The only witness who survived that night shift. But here's the part they don't write down. I don't think it was finished. I think it let me go. Because every night, when my house is quiet, I hear the same footsteps. Slow. Careful. Stopping just outside the bedroom door. Waiting. I was the only witness who survived that night shift. And I don't think I was meant to.